All right, hello everyone. Welcome to Staking Nerd, episode 3. My name is Remy. I'm glad to welcome Yorick. Hello, Yorick.
Hello, Remy. Good
How
to
you
see you
doing?
again.
Good to see
I'm
you.
doing great. How are you? You're doing exciting things in your life, I hear.
Yes, I'm doing a bunch of exciting things, including building a house. If you
Oh my
guys
God.
can believe this, which is quite involving. But today we're here to talk about staking in general, and we have a few interesting topics to talk today. The first one's gonna be Fusaka and potentially the timeline around the next fork for testnet and mainnet. The second one is going to be the few different changes that are coming on Rocket Pool and Lido. They're more like evolutions of their protocols, but we'll dive more into those later on. And we have some mentions about the hardware requirements for staking and running a node in general. And finally, we'll talk about some of the news with clients and the last few issues that we've been seeing with some of them. But first let's dive with Fusaka. What's going on with Fusaka? Have you been following the ACD discussion about this?
You know I have. And I've done this. We should probably link. I've done this, and I'm going to shill her here by following Christine Kim. She is no longer with Galaxy, and now she has her own Substack, and she does a lovely ACD write-up. She does write-ups for all 3 calls. So if you're not following all core devs obsessively, you might not be aware. There are actually 3 all core dev calls that are happening. You have all core dev consensus layer. So that's your Lighthouse, Prism, Nimbus, Grandin, etc. Those guys, right? Then you have your all core devs execution layer. Geth, Nethermind, Besu, I should probably know all the others. Aragon, Ref, Nimbus EL now. We're going to talk about that in a minute.
Yes.
And then you have all core devs testing, which is a new call, which happens every week, and where they're talking about how the implementation is going. So this is part of the revamping of being able to ship faster, that on the all core devs consensus and execution, which happened on a Thursday, and they switch back and forth, right? So one week it's execution, and next week it's consensus, and back and forth. They also have one testing call on Monday every week to just talk about how the implementation is going, so they can ship faster and not spend so much time during the other calls on how it's going, and they can talk more about where they want to be with the next hard fork. So all that said, yes, Fusaka is coming, the next hard fork. Fula and Osaka, I think, is what Fusaka is made up of.
Yeah, the name for each of the layers, right? One for execution
Right,
and
yeah,
one for consensus.
that's right. Fula is the star, so that's consensus, and then Osaka is a town in Japan, and that's execution. Together they make Fusaka. The big thing here, well, is more blobs, layer 2 scaling.
PeerDAS,
So
right?
yes, PeerDAS. So with Ethereum having a new North Star now for all its hard forks, might as well mention that as well. The 3 things that Ethereum Foundation says they'd really like to see core devs focusing on, which of course this is completely just soft power, right? They can recommend, they can't
Agreed. Yeah.
state it will be so, right? Core devs still do whatever core devs want to do, but the 3 North Stars, or the 3 leads here, are scale layer 1, scale layer 2, and user experience. So
I mean, part of the whole scaling has been there for quite a while, right? We've been talking
it
about
has.
scaling for forever, but maybe this is more detailed or precise in terms of like exactly what I want to do. With
I'm seeing more velocity and focus, I think. Sure, there's lots of detail, and there always has been, but now it is also with the idea of headliners that says every hard fork has one big change, one headliner change on the consensus layer, one big change on the execution layer, and then a couple of smaller ones further in. That's to avoid what happened to us with Pectra. So a little bit of history here. If you remember half a year
Yes.
ago, that's long ago, Pectra shipped, and the last hard fork. And Pectra was going to have PIRDAS in it. Fusaka is actually Pectra B, if you so will.
Exactly,
They
yeah.
cut it in two because it got too big.
Spectra Part 2, yeah.
Pectra Part 2 or Fusaka. Okay, so PIRDAS is one of the big things. Blob target will be increased. We don't quite know yet to what, but possibly 48 blobs.
We are currently
also not
at a target of 6 and a maximum of 9,
8.
right?
That's right. Yes, that's where we are. They also introduced something called a blob parameter only fork with Fusaka. So don't expect that Fusaka will immediately jump, by like 5x more blobs. Instead, they will have that BPO change. They'll bump it a little bit, and then they already have planned that afterwards they do small hard forks that only change the blob parameters and nothing else, right? And so that they can up the blob numbers without needing to go through the entire hard fork all over again and everything that comes with doing a hard fork.
I want to come back to
So
PIRDAS for a minute here, because I believe the idea behind it is instead of having everyone broadcast all the blobs, you'll only be sampling or broadcasting like part of them, right? So nodes will only have like part of all the blobs, and then there'll be some kind of way to confirm that at least you have a sample of all of them, and then they can all be recovered or found from the whole network.
This is absolutely true, and it also depends on how much ETH you have staked on your node. So what they do is they'll have what they call data columns, right? All the blob data is split up into columns, and you will send so many depending on what kind of node you are. We just before this selected a whole bunch of links, and Remy will stick them into YouTube so you can follow along with this and see these this discussion. So if you are a non-validating node, not a staker, you'll have at least 4 data columns. If you have one attached validator of say 32 ETH, that's 8 data columns. Then for each additional 32 ETH staked, and that can be an extra validator, or it can be the same validator compounding with just like a 64 ETH validator and so on, right? For each additional 32 stake, you will handle one more extra data column. So once you have 1,824 ETH staked, that would be 57 32 ETH validators, or one rather beefy compounding one. You are handling 64 columns, which enables reconstruction of the entire set.
And this is in line with like if you're a small staking node, you won't be totally like fully impacted with the increased amount of like bandwidth that you're required for all this.
Yeah, we're expecting that the bandwidth requirements for home stakers will remain about the same as what they are now.
And that's the goal in the future, right? We kind of want to keep the bandwidth requirement low.
We want to make sure that home stakers stay viable. That's right. Yes, that's very important. And it gets even more important with Glamsterdam, which we're not going to go in detail here. That's the next fork after that, where we have fossil fork choice and forced inclusion lists, and we really need home stakers for that, right? And then there is also such a thing as a supernode, which must handle all 128 columns. Now, requirements for that, we'll get back to that, but initial back of the napkin math shows that a supernode has about 10x the bandwidth requirements of a regular node.
Interesting.
But if you have, that kind of ETH staked, then you could probably afford the bandwidth.
Probably, yeah. This is a rich man's problem.
Yeah, you're not gonna do it at home, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Let's talk about
That's
the
the
timeline of like
timeline.
Fusaka. Yeah, I believe the official timeline is Q4
Yes.
2025, but maybe we could
Mhm.
dive slightly deeper into like what we can expect.
These, yes, the
Um,
sort of official timeline is Q4. There are still voices that say, why are we trying to break this over the knee? Q1 26 is also fine, but they wanted to ship faster. So Q4 is the idea. There's currently a suggestion in front of all core devs to have client releases for mainnet ready on November 3rd and then ship on December 3rd. They have to have a 30-day in there so that layer twos have a chance to get ready.
and as usual, they will phase this out throughout the testnet first. So we can expect this
Correct.
to go through Sepolia, Hoodie, Ephemery will might do it,
Holeshki,
and
they're doing it
Holeshki
Holeshki.
too, yeah.
One last thing on
Which
Holeshki.
is gonna be the final one because Holeshki is getting phased out as well
It is
after
indeed.
Fusaka,
Holeshki
right?
is going to be gone after Fusaka. 2 weeks after Fusaka finalizes on Holeshki, Holeshki gets shut down. So, timeline, watch this space. Currently, Fusaka is in DevNets. DevNet 3 still has some stability issues.
I
DevNet
believe they want to do
5,
another DevNet after that one, right?
yes, DevNet 5 should start for reasons that I haven't followed that closely. DevNet 5 is the next one. 4, I guess, was done and shut down. 3 was kept alive to figure out what's going on with these sync issues. And DevNet 5 comes, I think, next week. So it is entirely possible that this timeline of cut releases mid-September, then 2 weeks later, at the end of September for Koleshki, that this timeline doesn't happen. And if that timeline doesn't happen, then mainnet might get pushed. So with the, shall we say, somewhat chaotic release process around Pectra, all core devs gave themselves all kinds of rules to follow, which they are now already breaking, around how releases are supposed to work, right? So that's okay, though. I mean, it's their rules. They can debate them and figure out what they want, which is what they're doing. But if they're sticking to their current plan, then there's 2 weeks between initial release and first testnet fork, and then there's 2 weeks between each testnet fork. So we have 2 weeks to Sepolia, 2 weeks to Hodi. That's the order: Poleshki, Sepolia, Hodi. Hodi as being the last one. And yeah,
I'm expecting
we shall
like
see.
this to be released on mainnet between like the end of November and maybe the start of January, something along
Yeah,
this
so
line.
the earliest that it would activate on mainnet is December 3rd, with client releases November 3rd, right? They're not going to get it done any faster. It could slip.
Yeah. So I guess there's a few other EIPs that we haven't talked about that are included in Fusaka, but they're mostly minor compared to PeerDAS and the increase of blobs. We don't know exactly how much they want to increase blobs, but I guess that will be discovered through testing and
It
seeing
will be indeed.
like how much bandwidth this is incurring for everyone.
Yeah, and that's the part of that. That's the point of BPOs, right? Blob parameter only hard forks, so that they can observe this on mainnet, see how it does, then increase it, observe, see how it does. So they can always change their mind as to how far they want to go. 48 has been bandied about, but literally it's up to discovery. We should also maybe show here forkcast.org,
Yes, we will.
something that the EF has built
Yeah.
and Nixo has worked on, which is an amazing, great new
It is an
resource
awesome
that shows you
resources. Yeah.
exactly what's going into a hard fork.
It is putting visibility on all these hard fork and the process into selecting which IPs are being included, which ones are being declined, which ones
Yep.
are headliners, and so if you want to check this out, this is like one of the best resources around.
Right. There is one more thing that we should probably mention, which is gas pricing. So Ethereum has a layer 1 and many layer 2s. If you follow crypto Twitter, by the way, don't, then you will have seen that the Ethereum network is currently quote unquote unusable because you pay $20 for a transaction. That's how it's supposed to work. And layer 2s are still cheap. That's why they exist. That said, we're currently at 45 million gas limit. Half of that is the target. 45 is the max. And after Fusaka, this should go to 100 million. We currently have 2 clients. I want to say Geth and Besu. I hope I'm not getting this wrong. That aren't quite fast enough to do 60 million before Fusaka. So they're working on that. We might see 60 million gas before Fusaka ships. Then with Fusaka, one of those EIPs we mentioned, or a couple of them are going to be gas repricings, which allows them to safely go to 100 million, not run into a corner case that might make the blocks too large to handle, right?
So as you increase the amount of gas included in a block, you get more work to be done by the clients in order to validate everything and make sure that the client can still follow the chain as the blocks are coming in.
And I fully expect that 100 million is where we will stick until Glamsterdam, and then we can raise bit by bit to 300 million. We'll discuss that when we have a Glamsterdam call, not today, but that would allow Ethereum to go to 300 million gas, which, given that we started at 30 million at the beginning of the year, is pretty cool. 10x in, like a year and a half or so at the end, once Glamsterdam ships. That's pretty cool.
And this is also part of the scaling roadmap where we try to scale not only through the L2s, but also through L1.
That's right. Scale L1, scale L2, improve user experience or UX. Those are the things that Ethereum wants to really focus on.
Awesome. I believe that's pretty much all that we can say about Fusaka for right now. So let's switch to our next topic, which is going to be Rocket Pool and Lido. So Rocket Pool has this Saturn roadmap that was started with Saturn 0, where I believe that's where they added the new mini pools where you could create like your own pool with only 8 ETH, right?
With Ethereum and no RPL. So we should maybe, for people who aren't that deep into the ecosystem, Rocket Pool is a liquid staking protocol. Anybody can run nodes for them permissionlessly, and it takes 8 ETH of your own ETH, and then the other 24 from these stakers that get the Rocket Pool liquid staking token to do a validator. Exactly. And in the past, it took some RPL, their own token. Now
you can only use ETH as your collateral for the mini pools. But now they're pushing this new evolution of this Saturn protocol with Saturn 1, where they'll have a few new features, including the ability to stake with only 4 ETH, I believe.
That's right.
That's correct,
yes.
Right?
Yes. So what they're trying to do is improve capital efficiency for node operators, right? So that you can come in with 4 ETH instead of 8. And then also they're trying to kind of rescue their token RPL. And they do that here by saying you can still stake RPL to your node. And what it does to you is eventually, I don't think even this is Saturn 1, this might be Saturn 2, you are going to get a higher portion of ETH rewards when you have RPL staked versus when you don't.
Interesting.
Whether that makes sense for you is going to be a huge debate and probably spreadsheet nerdery. And there's lots of people who are happy to debate that in the Rocket Pool Discord as well.
I believe there's a lot of new features that I'm not fully aware of because I'm not closely following the Rocket Pool development. But one interesting thing is I believe they're targeting the end of October for their mainnet release of this new evolution, the Saturn 1.
29th. Yes. And one really important feature for this is they are going to have the ability to force an exit. So Rocket Pool is, they had this wonderful idea that everybody would stake with Rocket Pool and ETH would flow in. Right now ETH is going up in price versus fiat, and people want to unstake, come out and sell. Perfectly normal thing to do, right? Take some profits.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, and for that to work, Rocket Pool has to close some validators, and they have no way to do that and force that. They can say, hey, Mr. Node Operator, you can make some money if there's an arbitrage opportunity. Why don't you, close and arb? But other than that, there's really no way of incentivizing that. So they're going to, with Saturn 1, they're going to have the ability to just go and say, we need some ETH for liquidity. We're going to close some mini pools.
And I guess they will leverage the EIP 7002 features of like the,
they will. Exactly.
Exit request that you can perform now with the withdrawal address.
What they're going to do. Yes. In order to be able to do that, that's where it gets in a little bit of nitty-gritty. They will have to. So they call their validators mini pools, and if you have two of them, you have two mini pools. So they're going to introduce also something called maxi pools, where multiple validators are in one thing.
I guess they're called a mega pool, right?
Well, mega pool, yeah. Right? So not maxi pool, mega pool. That's what they call them. They're still 32 ETH validators. They're not compounding validators. That's a whole other discussion, which we're not getting into here. And it's more gas efficient, right? If you have a number of validators running, or what used to be mini pools. So if you have your mega pool, you have multiple validators running, and you want to, get rewards or whatever it is, you don't have to send a transaction for each one. It's just one transaction. It's much more gas efficient if you have a bunch of ETH to deploy.
Let's switch to Lido. Lido has its own evolution of their community staking module, the CSM V2, which is coming up soon as well. I believe it's coming up in September on mainnet, which is their target. Maybe that'll slip. But what's new there? Do you have more insight than I do?
I don't know that I have more insight than you do, but I have a couple things to mention here. So Lido currently have a limit of 4% of their stake in the permissionless community module. They want to bump that to 10%. And in order to do so, they want to be sure that they don't get sibbled to hell and back with people saying, I'm totally a home staker, and they're not, right? And you just have the big guys coming in there into community staking. So what they're going to do is they're still going to allow anybody to come in without saying who they are, but they're also going to have something called the verified community staker. Let me just see what this thing is called exactly.
I believe that's part of their ability to create different node types as part of the CSM evolution.
Yeah, identified community staker is what they call this. So the first round of applications for ICS is open now. It will close October 1st. And as an identified community staker, and I think they're going to do this a number of different ways, that you can prove that you're indeed a community staker, like a home staker or a small staker. That's the idea, right? You'll get additional rewards. You'll get the ability to have a smaller bond.
Do you know if that
there might even be a bigger payout, that kind of stuff.
Do you know if that involves any form of KYC or?
I think it can. I think there's the idea. I haven't actually looked deeply into how they're doing that. So they could do something like a ZK passport. I don't know whether you're familiar with that idea.
Yes.
That protocol allows you to prove that you have a passport with a zero knowledge proof without showing what it is. So you don't have to expose any detail of the passport. All of that is kept on your phone, but a ZK proof is generated from it, which is then unique to your passport to say, yep, this is an individual passport that was just scanned, and all the details, the thing, of course, is in our wonderfully trustless environment, you have to trust that it really keeps all that on the phone and just transmits the ZK proof and not everything about you.
Yeah.
You know, I know Aztec is using this. I don't know whether Lido, but they'll also have other ways of proving that, you know, you're a community staker. I think including, did I run a solo node? Did I engage in the forum? Those kind of things, right? So by all means, check it out. I think this is the first where we're saying good things about Lido and eStaker. We should wash our mouths out with soap.
I mean, they're still a great like product overall, and their initiative to try to include more of a permissionless
Absolutely,
way of
yes.
staking is awesome to me. Yeah.
Yes, we do like that. So I think they have, I'm not sure how many they have, but I think they have 450 operators they had registered at one point.
As part of the CSM.
As part of CSM originally, and now they have this identified community staker thing, and they want to, you know, get to 10% of their stake running permissionlessly.
Awesome.
That's
I can only applaud this.
I'm all for it. You know.
All right.
And yeah, I did have another thought, but we can come back to it, and that was why even consider this versus solo staking? And it is very simply, if I make quick back of the napkin math here. Okay. So we always say solo staking is the gold standard. And I think that's a really good comparison because one validator is now worth more than a kilogram of gold. 144,000 US dollars or thereabouts. The kilogram of gold last I looked was like a little under 120,000. So calling it the gold standard is absolutely correct, but not everybody has the ability to deploy the equivalent of a kilogram of gold into their staking.
When we started, like in 2020, with the beacon chain, it was much cheaper, right?
Yeah, I remember I bought at the time and it was like under 13,000 bucks, right? And I thought it was a lot, like that much into a validator, should I?
Which is why we need all of these new options where you can stake with a lower amount,
yes.
Right?
So the idea is that if the gold standard is just a bit too much for you, but you love the idea of being a node operator and staking and decentralizing Ethereum and getting paid for it, you know, then Rocket Pool and also Lido CSM allow you to do that with a much lower amount of capital that you need to put in from your own, and the rest comes then from stakers that get the LST, right? The liquid staking token.
Okay. Let's talk about hardware requirements. So there was a few discussions about like what should be like exactly the hardware requirements for running a node, and we've had the help of Kev, which wrote this initial document where he was trying to really set in stone what are the hardware requirements, because we've been talking about this forever, like since we started doing staking, and we've had our own like ETH staker requirements that we've been publishing in a few different places, including on our website, and it's somewhat different. But what I like about this, and they've also launched this new EIP 7870. If you want to have a look, we'll put the link in the description too. But they've launched this approach where they're trying to also think about the roles of people running nodes, right?
Exactly. No, are you running a full node? Are you running a validating node? You know, potentially maybe we'll see in there, are you running a super node for PeerDAS? I think they're still debating whether it should be in this EIP or somewhere else. But you know, personally, I'm saying this is the EIP for hardware requirements. Put it in here.
Are you also like trying to do local block building as well?
Local block building is another one. Yes. So there are requirements for that, and they are different than what you will see on eStaker, and are different from what you will see on other sites like the eThocker I maintain. We still have lower requirements there. So if we want to get concrete, right now I think eStaker says 4 cores, 32 gig of RAM, and 4 terabyte of NVMe, right?
Yep.
Is that our current Yeah, that's also what Docker does. Exactly. And this EIP says 64 gig of RAM, 8
And 8
cores,
cores,
16 threads, 8 cores, 16 threads. They specifically call out threads. We'll get back to that in a minute. And also 4 terabyte of NVMe. So what's going on here? What they're doing is basically saying, if you buy this, then we think that no matter what the protocol does next, you're going to be fine for the next 2 to 3 plus years, right?
So this is kind of a
reasonable lifetime of the hardware.
future-proofing in a way, right?
It is absolutely. So today, you can absolutely, without any issue, run on 4 cores and 32 gig of RAM. You're not
Even
gonna run out
less
of
if
CPU, and even less.
if you want to
run
tweak a
on
few
way
things,
less.
yeah.
You can tweak a few things. You can run it. You can fit into 16 gig and some ROC 5B ARM thing. People still do that, right? It's still possible, but it's So the and sorry, I want to also talk about the storage here. 4 terabyte basically allows you to just run a full node and not think about it. But we also have history expiring now, so a 2 terabyte will absolutely still work if you have an existing node. Right, do that. So I think my recommendation is, if you're building new and you have the money for it, you may as well go, particularly if you're doing solo staking with the kilogram plus of gold here in your ETH, then you may as well spend that little bit extra more and make sure you can
absolutely,
64 gig of RAM and you have a 4 terabyte NVMe. Why not? Maybe you run a second client on there or whatever. And you have your 8 cores, 16 threads in the AMD Intel world, right? If you have existing hardware and it works for you, and maybe you're expiring and you're on a 2 terabyte NVMe and you have 32 gig of RAM and you're still seeing that like half of that is free, which might well be the case depending on your client mix, nothing that you need to do.
Yeah, there's no point in just upgrading for the sake of upgrading at this point.
You don't need to upgrade for the sake of upgrading. I think that's the main thing I want to say.
You could just wait, and as we know, some of these components are very easy to source for many people. And so like if you see that like suddenly you're out of this space, you can just buy one new disk on Amazon or something. Yeah.
You could, but also disk space in particular, we'll get to new expiry options in a minute here, I believe. Disk space in particular isn't such a scary thing anymore for stakers, right? For full nodes, sure. If you're using this for an RPC full node, you better have your 4 terabyte at this point. 2 is not going to handle you. But if you don't need historical data, so even if you just run an RPC and you just want to transact right now, and all you need is the current state of the network, 2 terabyte is more than enough. We're using about 1 terabyte right now with expired nodes, and I already know we can go lower. And yeah, so I wouldn't worry about that too much at this point in time.
Great. I don't have much to say about this. I believe you said pretty much all of all the things that I was thinking about. Let's switch to some of the client news. We have a bunch of different news with clients.
Yeah.
One of them is the bug with Ref. So what happened with Ref? Can you tell me a little more?
Sure. Ref is an execution client written in Rust, and yesterday morning it lost the plot. It just stopped following the chain. Wrong state root, it said, and boom, right? So as far as bugs go, this is not the worst thing that can happen. Just stop following the chain is actually much better than following the wrong chain.
It is.
Which has also happened to other clients before, just saying, none of them are immune to this. So they have published now a way to recover a Ref node if that happened to you.
And we'll publish a link to the instructions on how to recover as well.
Indeed. This also didn't happen to all nodes. There's some indication, again, this is new, right? We're recording this today and this happened yesterday. Some indication that most people can recover and some cannot. And there's no full post-mortem yet and no fixed software yet. So that will all come. If you're watching this in my future on September 10th, then I really hope that by then we have all the answers. But today is September 3rd. We only have a couple of the answers.
I'm sure we'll have more details as this is being investigated. But this is why we have client diversity, right? We expect clients to have bugs. We expect some of them to just crash and burn. Well, this one didn't burn, but it somewhat crashed, and then that's how we recover. We just fix as we find them.
Yeah, if you look back into the timeline, all of the clients had bugs at some point, right? Including bugs that halted them, and in some cases, including bugs that had them herring off on the wrong fork, which is worse. So have client diversity for a reason. I think it's one of Ethereum's superpowers that doesn't get talked about a lot. It's part of the reason why the network has never been down.
Yep.
Liveness is built into the network. It doesn't mean it can't halt, but it means it's much less likely, particularly when you have a whole bunch of clients that can, if push comes to shove, still keep the network up.
Talking about issues, we also had one with Teku. I believe there was some kind of dependency issues with their latest release, but I believe it was fixed with a new one, right?
It was fixed today. So this was a much smaller impact issue because it only impacted people who updated to the latest Teku 25.9.0, which I think came out yesterday. And if they updated yesterday right away, and they were on a system, on a Linux system with, say, a Grafana installed, and they weren't running this stuff in Docker containers, then Teku would conflict with the library on the system and stop the testing. They fixed this today with 25.9.1. If you are in Docker in any way, shape, or form, don't worry about it. This did not impact you. So that's that node and Rocket Pool and NodeSet and Ethereum and ETH Docker, and there's probably a couple more that use that technology of containerizing. Then this didn't hit you. If you haven't upgraded to Teku yet and you're about to upgrade, then just upgrade to 25.9.1.
And you'll be fine.
If you upgrade to 25.9.0 and you didn't hit this bug, then you don't need to do anything. You're fine.
Awesome. Next is Nimbus, which has been working on this new execution client for a while, and they just called for support and people to just test it.
They're asking for testing. So we're getting a new execution layer, the Nimbus execution layer client. We already have the Nimbus consensus layer client. Now there's also a Nimbus execution layer client. It's been around for a couple of years.
Yeah, for quite a while.
Work on it really accelerated this year. And they're now feeling confident enough in it that they're saying, spin up a few nodes. Obviously not your mainnet validator node maybe, but if you have a testnet node, try it on there.
Yep.
If you have just a machine where you just want to try mainnet, maybe run it as an RPC, as a failover node, whatever, try that. You could do that.
I believe Nimbus also has this goal of creating this big monolithic client that would include both execution and consensus eventually.
They might, yeah.
So that is likely part of their effort together.
I'm assuming so, yes. As to how you can deploy this, ETH Docker supports it. That's one way to do it. That should be a fairly simple and automated way of getting this up and running. With any consensus layer client, by the way. You can, of course, do a Nimbus for the fun of it, but it need not be a Nimbus. You can do a Lighthouse Nimbus, and that'll work. And then I don't know that we have any specific systemd guides for it yet.
No, I don't believe we have anything special for this. But if you like tweaking and like tinkering with stuff, I'm sure you can get there.
Right. And one more client, nothing wrong with that,
Yes. As many as we can get that are of a good quality, we can include them in the whole ecosystem. The next one is Netamine, which just had a big release, 1.33.0.
That's right.
Which includes a bunch of different stuff. I won't go over all of the release notes, but one of them is a fix to a bug where you can close it down, or there was some issues with just doing a clean shutdown. They have
Yes.
also a few options in terms of like history expiry. So
Hmm.
if you want to save on some of this disk space, they have a few different options there. And they have this new UI. I don't know if you've tried it.
I
Um,
have not tried it yet. No.
I want to try it because it seems awesome. I love the UI and the way that it displays
It looks really,
everything.
it
Yeah,
looks really cool. Yeah, it runs by default on the RPC port. They have in the release notes some ideas on how to put it on a separate port if you don't want to. If you don't want to have it on RPC, maybe you want it on port 8080 or something. They have some ideas on release notes on how to expose just the health endpoint and not all of RPC. But yeah, it runs over the RPC port on a specific endpoint. I haven't tried it yet. This was there before, but not this nice. So this is certainly something that people are encouraged to play with and see whether they like this. This is basically a lovely health endpoint and visualization dashboard without using Grafana, built right into the
exactly.
client.
I believe it
Yeah,
displays like the amount of transactions in the mempool, like as it is
it
building
does.
blocks and like
Yep, it is. It is. It is. It has all the blinking lights. It looks really,
yes,
really cool. And as you say, there's a bug fix in 1.3.3. If you had 1.3.2.3 or 1.3.2.4, you may have noticed that Nethermind refuses to shut down, and then eventually whatever system you use to run it, whether that's system D or Docker, will just force reap it, kill it the hard way. That's been fixed. And then the expiry. They have two new expiry options. Both of them are experimental. So do use it on, if you like, on your failover or on your testnet, but don't use it on mainnet validators, please. Those two options are one. Do the normal expiry that we have now, where all pre-merge data is being thrown away, but do it without needing to resync. So typically, Nethermind needs a resync after 1 to 2 hours. You can attest again. With this new option, you would just tell it, go expire this in the background, and you'd be back up immediately. You don't have to wait those 1 to 2 hours. That's pretty cool. The second one is really aggressive, and we're going to talk about where you need to be careful with it. They call it rolling expiry. So that is full EIP 444 or 44s, 4444. Full EIP 44s, which means that you have a rolling expiry of history with by default 1 year kept.
which I believe
And then everything older than
was the
that gets thrown
goal
away.
of this whole history expiry.
That is the eventual goal.
Yeah,
But it messes with some protocols. For example, Rocket Pool, Stickwise, SSV, all these protocols that rely on something called receipts, where their smart contracts emit a log message, a receipt into the history, and then you can query that and see what happened. Rocket Pool uses it, for example, for rewards. I think SSV uses it to know which shards you need to pay attention to, which key shards have been assigned to you, and you need to grab, right? So with rolling expiry, the receipts also go. So you only have receipts for the last year, which messes with these protocols. So that's why it's not widely deployed yet. The current plan, as I understand it from core devs, is currently we have pre-merge expiry. They want to finalize a new format to have this data. We currently have the ERA1 format for it, and then we have the ERA format for post-merge. They want to bring both of those formats together in something called ERA-E. That's going to be the new file format to store this data. So you can always download an ERA file and get all the expired data in a node if that's what you want. Once they have that, they want to expire pre-Cancun data. So everything up to Dencun gets expired. And then at some point after that, they're looking at rolling expiry. They're also thinking about, so we had this idea called a portal network. which would be a separate client that has a portal history network and a portal state network, and I think there were a couple other ideas where all this data is being kept and you can query it. The portal team was defunded by ETH, has not found new funding, so portal is for all intents and purposes dead. However, portal history will live on inside execution layer clients. Standalone clients are dead. Reason for that is a little technical. The portal history network as envisioned now will not have headers. So you will need something that already has the headers, and that's an execution layer client. So what that means in practice is, say I go to a Geth and I say, hey, I need a log from 2 years ago. Geth should, once it has portal built in, if this happens, again, this is a discussion point, not a this will absolutely happen, it would go and say, oh, I don't have that. Let me query the portal network and get that for you. So at that point, it would be transparent. In the meanwhile, these clients should maybe, or these protocols should maybe think about whether they can store that information in something other than receipts, and have it on chain still, but have it in a format that isn't receipts and doesn't disappear.
It seems like there's still quite a lot of details that are in flux, and like everything is up in the air still. But it's something to watch because it has a huge impact on node operators and stakers.
It does. What that means is that once we have rolling expiry, we're going to fit in under 1 terabyte of disk for a long time. State, of course, will continue growing. With gas increasing, state will grow faster, but history will be able to throw away and then only query when we need it. That's a big change.
We've been going over our initial time estimate, but we still have to mention at least 2 clients that have been having updates. The first one is Geth. They just had a few bug fixes, but one which you wanted to mention was this new path-based archive mode.
Yeah, we're going to keep that brief. It is not important for stakers, but if you're the kind of person who really wants historical data for your, data crunching, whatever use you have for it, a Geth archive node used to take like 16 terabyte of disk. It's a little crazy. Now it fits in under 4 with this new path-based method with Geth 116. So if you have a use for archive node, try out that new path-based archive. I think it'll work really well for you.
And we've had Lodestar having a few sync issues. I've not been following this much, but maybe you have more insight about this.
Yeah, this was a follow-on to the RETH debacle. So some people have recovered the RETH nodes and then have a Lodestar as the consensus layer node, and then found, oh, I can't actually sync back up to head, or if I do, I lose sync again. And Lodestar have said, yep, that's on us. We're working on it. We're doing sync improvements. So just watch this space. There should be a new Lodestar release within, I want to say, a week or 2 that improves sync performance of Lodestar, so you can stay synced and not fall out of sync.
As usual, if you're running any of these clients, you should be watching the new releases and reading potentially the release note just to make sure that you're up to date and following what are the changes with the clients that you are running at least.
Okay.
Well, that's all for today. I believe we went through all the topics that we planned for. Thanks for joining, Yorick. And
thanks for joining, Remy.
Thanks.
And I think my final thing is to say, if you enjoyed this and you have topic ideas for the next one, then stick them in a comment, or stick them in our Discord, or stick them into our Reddit.
Awesome. Well, have a good one, and we'll see you next time.